What Brings Me to You opens with an unconventional meet-cute that immediately sets the tone for a romance, built on vulnerability and emotional honesty. Jane and Will meet at a mutual friend's wedding, and their chemistry is instant, charged, awkward, and magnetic. Instead of falling into an easy flirtation, they collide in a way that exposes their emotional baggage right from the start. Their conversation escalates quickly into personal territory, and an impulsive attempt to hook up in a coat closet ends awkwardly, forcing both of them to retreat and reconsider what they truly want. This failed moment of passion becomes the spark for something neither of them expected, a deeper connection based on sharing the very stories that shaped them. After the failed intimate moment, Jane tries to distance herself, but Will, equally intrigued and confused, follows her outside. They begin walking through the city, and what starts as small talk soon turns into a confessional exchange. As their walk continues, the film shifts into its defining structure. Each character reveals the key romantic experiences that have shaped their fears and desires. Will's first story is about a passionate but destructive relationship in his early 20s, one that ended because he sabotaged it with infidelity and insecurity. He describes how that breakup left him with lingering guilt and a fear of hurting someone again. The movie uses flashbacks to bring his memories to life, presenting a younger Will who is impulsive, earnest, and emotionally lost. These stories deepen our understanding of his inner conflict and his desire to finally break free from his past. Jane's first story reveals a very different emotional struggle. She talks about a relationship with a man who seemed perfect on paper, stable, ambitious, and ready for a future, but who never truly saw her for who she was. Their romance was built more on expectations than connection, and she stayed in it far too long out of fear. As the day unfolds, Jane and Will continue their journey across the city, stopping at cafes, parks, and bookstores. With each new location, their stories grow more intimate and revealing. Will recounts an affair he deeply regrets, not because of scandal, but because it forced him to realize how emotionally reckless he had become. Jane confesses to a long-distance relationship that collapsed after she discovered she had been idealizing a version of the man that never truly existed. These exchanges are raw and unfiltered, giving the film a soulful, almost therapeutic energy. Both characters slowly begin to realize that their romantic failures weren't coincidences. They were reflections of the parts of themselves they were afraid to face. The connection between Jane and Will deepens not through flirting but through emotional honesty. As they listen to each other's pasts, they begin to see their own patterns mirrored back at them. Jane recognizes that she has spent years minimizing her needs in relationships, always choosing partners she could fix. Will understands that his fear of vulnerability led him to choose relationships where he never had to face real intimacy. Their dialogue becomes a shared unburdening, a process of shedding the old versions of themselves. This is where the film shines. It presents romance not as escape, but as confrontation. Two people forced to decide if they can be better for someone new. Midway through the film, Jane shares the most painful story of her past, a partner who betrayed her at a moment of deep vulnerability. This experience left her with deep trust issues, and she confesses that even now, she is terrified of choosing wrong again. Will, in turn, shares his own most intimate confession, how his emotional drift and fear of commitment caused him to abandon someone he genuinely loved. These revelations become the emotional climax of the movie's middle section, showing that both characters are not merely looking for love, but for redemption. As evening falls, Jane and Will reach a quiet, reflective stage in their journey. Having exposed so much of themselves, they now struggle with the question of what comes next. The chemistry between them is undeniable, but the weight of their shared honesty makes them hesitate. They question whether this connection is real or simply a moment of emotional intensity created by their confessions. The film smartly avoids easy answer. In the final act, Jane and Will must decide whether they are brave enough to start something new. A moment of tension arises.
when Jane begins to pull away, fearing that they are moving too fast after such a raw day of honesty. Will, breaking his old patterns, chooses not to chase or pressure her, instead giving her space to decide for herself. This moment is crucial because it shows his growth. Jane, reflecting on everything she learned about herself, recognizes that fear has been guiding her for far too long. She returns to Will not out of desperation, but out of choice, a deliberate step toward the kind of love she's always been afraid to pursue. The film concludes on a hopeful, understated note. Jane and Will finally decide to give their connection a real chance, understanding that what brings them together isn't perfection, but the willingness to confront the truth about themselves. Their day of confessions becomes the foundation of something authentic, an opportunity to build a relationship grounded not in fantasy, but in honesty and mutual growth. Rather than promising a fairy tale ending, the movie leaves us with the sense that these two flawed, complicated people might finally be ready for a love that doesn't run or hide. And that choice, the courage to try, is what ultimately brings them to each other.